Today we're going to make a clay project inspired by female artists. Georgia O'Keeffe was a famous American artist who was from Wisconsin. She attended the Art School of Chicago and she taught elementary art. She was influenced by New Mexico and the landscape and nature. She often painted very large flowers to make it look like they were close up, and she has desert landscape and bones as well. Angie Lewin is a British artist who studied printmaking in college, which is a type of artwork where you can make a lot of the same artworks over and over again. She also worked as an illustrator, and she studied horticulture, which is the science and art of growing plants. Now she works in England and is inspired by plants around her home. Yaz Gaté is an Australian artist and art teacher who is inspired by the native botanicals from Australia and the Philippines where she was born. She uses black outlines around all of her plants to really make them stand out, and bright, bold colors, which she is sometimes inspired by from Filipino desserts. We are going to make a clay pinch pot today and make a little clay cactus or succulent to go inside, or maybe even both if you can fit them in there. We're going to start off with 2 pieces of clay. 1 piece of clay is going to become our pot. Going to be our pinch pot, so it needs to be in a nice round ball. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then first we're going to take our thumb and stick it right in the middle of the ball of clay, and you want to put your thumb all the way to the end without poking through, and that makes it start to look like a little pot. Right now it has a tiny little hole in it, but we want to make that grow bigger and bigger. So if you remembered when we've made pinch pots before, we don't use tiny little baby pinchers. We use big alligator pinchers with all of our fingers. So our thumb goes inside, the rest of your fingers pinch on the outside like this. You don't want to curl it around and squish it. It's just pinching between your thumb and your fingers, and you push that wall a little bit skinnier. Then you move it over and pinch it again, and move to the next part around in a circle and pinch again. Once the hole's big enough, you can use both thumbs inside, and you are going to pinch this pot to make it nice and big. You don't want to pinch too much because then you'll make your walls too skinny, and you guys probably know what happens. It falls apart. If it is cracking, it's okay. You can push it back together. We can smooth those out. If it's really bad, I'll come around with a spray bottle and spray some water on it to help smooth out. But look, this clay is wet enough, we'll be able to smooth with just our fingers. So once we have the shape of the bowl that we want, maybe about the thickness on the walls as a pancake, if it's too thick around the bottom, just pinch those parts. And we want to make sure it stands up. So you might want to like tap it down on the table, make sure it stands. The inside doesn't really matter right now. We don't need to smooth it out because we're going to put things inside. So my other piece of clay becomes all my plants. So different cacti, different succulents. You can break it apart, and here's where you kind of have to problem solve and come up with different ideas and solutions to making different kinds of plants. So you can roll between your fingers or roll on the table to make a cylinder. This in clay is called a coil. If you ever roll like Play-Doh or clay into long snakes, those are called coils. You can make coils, and this one is tall and skinny. It's not gonna really stand up on its own, but maybe I can make it for maybe a succulent that hangs over the plant. If I want a cactus to stand up in here, I might need to make it thicker. So I'll break off a bigger piece and squish it together. Maybe I'll roll it into a ball first and then make it into a bigger cylinder instead of a big coil. And if it has cracks in it, we can smooth those out, or little lines where it was squished together. And maybe I'll stand that up in here. don't know if you can see. We'll stand it up like this. And it might need to kind of lean onto the wall of the pot to help it stand up. I have a lot of more room in here, so I can make more. Maybe I'll rip this up. Maybe I'll roll a ball and pinch. We can push clay together to make different shapes. Maybe that will become part of maybe a little flower that's on top of the cactus. You can kind of push it together different ways. Or maybe it's sticking off the side like an arm. You guys can get creative with it. But are any of these pieces going to stick just on their own? No, we have to do something special called slip and score, which in this classroom, when we've done it before, we use something special to do it. And I'm sure you guys might be remembering already. We use a fork and water. You're all going to have your own fork and water today. And we need to slip and score all these pieces together. So I'm gonna take it apart. The part that sticks, remember this is like Velcro. Velcro, you need two pieces. You need one piece where it's going and one piece on the piece that's sticking. So I'm gonna dip my fork in the water. We're not going to dip the clay in water. We're not going to pour the water. We're not gonna scoop it all out. Just dip it in the water and then scratch back and forth like tic-tac-toe on our clay. We want it to look chunky like Play-Doh, or Velcro, sorry, Velcro. And then on that part, we're going to dip in water, scratch that part back and forth like tic-tac-toe so it looks chunky like Velcro. And then we're gonna take those two pieces and push them together. And then this one was gonna lean on the wall a little bit to help support it. These pieces, they need attached too. Dip in water, scratch, dip in water, scratch, where it's gonna go, and smush on. You don't need to smooth it all out, because if you smooth it all together, you're gonna lose your pieces of plants that are in here. It's not gonna look like separate plants anymore. If it is wiggling like a loose tooth, oh, I almost didn't scratch that one. I'm gonna scratch both of them. If you can wiggle your piece of clay and it feels like a loose tooth, it's going to fall out like a loose tooth. So right now this one feels a lot looser. Well, I didn't slip and score that one yet. These ones, those don't come out as easily because I slip and scored them. So if it feels like a loose tooth, you either forgot to slip and score it, or maybe you didn't scratch it deep enough, or maybe you forgot water, or you only did it to one piece of clay. You have to do it to both sides, and you have to use water. All this extra space inside my pot, I can add more things to it. So here's mine so far. I can add more arms to my cactus. I can add more plants in here to fill it all up. Anything that you attach has to slip and score. We can use a carving stick or a carving tool to poke some little dots on it to make it look like that's where the needles on the cactus are. Maybe you want to draw a design on the outside of your pot. You could draw lines or dots on it. I would not try to write any words because it's hard to see in clay, and it'll distract from what your project is, what the artwork is. You can wipe off the clay boogers. Don't worry about writing your name on the bottom. We're gonna write your name later. I will write your name later after it dries a little bit. When you are all done, you've made your pot, you've made your plants for it, you slip and scored it all in, you carved designs on it if you want to. You are going to put this on top of your name, and you are all done until this is dry, fired, and we can paint it next time. Your tools all go back where they came from, and we can clean up. All right.